Scott Morrison needs to read the room, doesn't he? Australians are being treated like mugs by state premiers, have done now for well over a year. We've never been treated so poorly, never had such stringent restrictions on our lives and our movement around the country. Now, I reckon a lot of this is over the top and unnecessary. Some people support it, I know, but whether you support it or not, it is tough. I mean, did ScoMo not see these pictures on the weekend at Coolangatta and Tweed Heads on Father's Day? Families kept apart by ridiculous state border closures, catching up across a plastic and cement hard border. How ridiculous and how cruel. And yet they were the lucky ones. So many others spent Father's Day hundreds of kilometres or more apart from their loved ones. I was one of them. My Father's Day was home alone. But the Prime Minister is defending his travel between Sydney and Canberra.
I can understand people's frustration, but I do think that there has been a lot of misinformation about this. I mean, I live in Sydney. I often have to be here for work. There was no requirement to get an exemption to go to Sydney, like all members of Parliament. Parliament session ended on Thursday. I had further meetings here with National Cabinet on Friday, and I returned home. There was no exemption required for me to return home, as I do on any occasion that I do have that opportunity. The exemption I require is to come back here to the ACT. And as Prime Minister, of course I need to come back to the ACT to have various meetings. There's various secure information that I can only receive directly, access to individuals. It's an important part of my job to be in Canberra. Well, all members of Parliament, and particularly those who have special responsibilities in Canberra, just like essential workers, need to be able to leave their home and go and work in their workplaces. I mean, the government still needs to function.
Look, you see, it just doesn't matter what permit was needed or what exemption came through. The point is that he had those exemptions. The rest of us don't get special treatment. When I drove back into lockdown Sydney from holidays 8 weeks or so ago, I knew that was it. I wouldn't be able to leave. I kind of regret doing it now, but there you go. I haven't seen my family for more than 8 weeks now. And I'm no victim. You know, my family can come to Sydney any time. We just reckon our little boys are better off staying out of lockdown as long as they can. So I'm lucky. I'm in a lucky position. We've made our own choices. But it does give me a bit of an insight into what others are experiencing around this country at the moment. And our country, as you know from watching this show, is full of a lot of people facing real strife, real trauma from lockdowns and hard borders, real hardship and torment. I know a number of people, friends and acquaintances, who've missed their own parents' funerals. Their children too have missed out on that proper farewell, that part of growing up in farewelling their grandparents. Some people have missed out on saying goodbye to dying relatives. It's unthinkable. Have a look at this from Channel 7 presenter Kylie Gillies, live on air this morning.
You may have noticed I haven't been around this week. That's because in the early hours of last Tuesday, we lost one of life's true gentlemen and the kindest man I know, my dad. He was a husband to Mum Mark for 57 years. He was a proud protector of me and my sister Stacey, adored grandpa to my two boys Gus and Archie, and Stacey's girls Anna and Julia. Dad, Ron, or Ronnie as he was known, loved the footy and cars and people. Gee, he loved to chat to anyone and everyone. Now, his funeral was yesterday in Queensland, and because of COVID lockdowns, Tony, the boys and myself had to watch a live stream in our lounge room. If I could have crawled through the computer screen to get there and give my mum and sister a hug, I would have.
Yeah, now I've never met Kylie, but that was beautiful. Her dad was obviously one of those role models so often overlooked, even dismissed these days, a decent and reliable man. But her family, Kylie's family, should have been there for that funeral. People should be allowed to cross borders, certainly, for such important things. Permits are not easy to get. The systems are truly onerous and cumbersome and callous. People just get chewed up. Just as an example, I applied more than 2 weeks ago to travel into South Australia, not because my family's there, but because I've got work to do there that can only be done in that state. But I haven't even got a response. Now, that's common. people are confronted by brick walls. They don't get permits and exemptions. Even if you've got a permit to go into South Australia or Queensland, you'd have to do 14 days isolation anyway. It is just nuts. And that's how it works for the rest of us. So it's no good the PM saying it was okay because he had the exemption and it's an essential work situation. Other people can't even get someone to take their call or process their online application. The country has become a cruel joke for anyone trying to move between states. Yes, I reckon the Prime Minister of this great country should be able to move around from state to state whenever he likes. But so should its citizens. So instead of defending his movements, defending his exemptions, Scott Morrison needs to show some national leadership and get stuck into the premiers. There's no excuse for borders to be closed in this country. We have vaccines aplenty. Virtually all of the vulnerable have got the jab in this country. Just about everyone else is underway too. We've got testing. We've had more than a year and a half to deal with these issues. There is no excuse to treat people so poorly anymore. The response is out of all proportion to the threat. How about the Prime Minister, instead of indulging these panicked and paranoid pandemic responses from the premiers, how about he pushes for the reopening of this country and the scrapping of hard borders between states? Doesn't our national anthem say that we're one and free? Instead, we are divided between the states and we're imprisoned by border closures. And we have a Prime Minister reduced to explaining he had exemptions to travel between Sydney and Canberra. What an embarrassment we have become.